Please explain the attitude of prayer. I tried to explain to ourselves here that it is possible to do more than one thing at the same time. We shouldn't think, how can I be in an attitude of prayer and attend to my work? I have very heavy responsibilities. How can I do both things? It is possible to do both things. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it. He didn't say all the time. There is a time that we cannot be in an attitude of prayer. When I have my shower, I can't exactly be in an attitude of prayer. When I have to do other things to do, he doesn't say all the time. He leaves it flexible. But it says it should be more than 50%. It should most of the time. He leaves it to you to decide whether you want to be 50.1% or you want to be 90%. He leaves that the decision to you. But it should be most of the time. So now, you know, science has proven that telepathy exists. Telepathy is communication between two individuals without the use of words, without the use of signs, without by sending a communication on your computer, an email through your computer, or a telephone call. So without these physical means of communication, science has proven that it is possible for two individuals, for example, to have telepathy, communication. I have experienced it quite often. I'm sure you have experienced it. For example, my wife and I had very close relationship. As I told you, my married life extends over 65 years. How many times this has happened? A thought comes to me, and immediately, before I say it, Violette is saying it. The same thought. This is telepathy. This exists. So our minds have powers, mental powers. We have many psychologists maybe amongst us in this group. Psychology has proven that this is possible. When Shoghi Effendi was asked about telepathy, he said this is a matter for psychology to investigate and to explain. It's a psychological thing. It exists. No physical communication of any kind. Mental communication. If you like, call it spiritual communication. Not physical. So when we think about that, we realize that one can be in communication with our beloved, our most beloved, our well-beloved, Baha'u'llah. We can be in communication with Abdul Baha, through Abdul Baha with Baha'u'llah. So this thing exists. So why isn't it possible for me as a Baha'i to have communication with my beloved? And he says in his writings over and over again, I am near you, you are far, I am near you. There are prayers on this point, that we draw ourselves away from God. He is right there. We shut ourselves out, but He's right there. We can be in communication with Him. He loves us. He wants to help us. His strength is there, His wisdom is there, His power is there. And I have to be able to draw on this myself and not be far myself, draw myself away from Him, get closer to Him. And that's what I think is the prayerful attitude, to realize that He sees me, yeah. He exists and He loves me, yeah. He's near me, He wants to be closer even to me. He wants me to turn to Him, to have communication with Him. To be in an attitude of prayer is this desire this effort to be closer to Him, to be aware that I am in His presence. I'm not shut out. No, I am in His presence. He sees me. We have to get into this mental, this spiritual condition. And it is not impossible. It is necessary. How can we achieve greater focus and concentration while praying? Yeah, that's a problem. And it will continue to be a problem to our last breath. Yeah. It is very difficult to do that. We have to try and try again. We will fail, we'll try again. Every time we will do a little bit better, and that's all right. Carry on. This mind moves, travels, thinks, wonders, imagines. Rein it in to the extent that you can. You will succeed, but I can assure you, I don't think that any one of us will succeed 100%. Never. Because we are human. But as I have said before, if we're satisfied with 50%, 0.1 of achievement, it's a dangerous area, because you'll soon get into the 40s, 49.9, then 49.8, and so on and so forth. Lift yourself up. It is like students passing to the higher class. To pass with 50.1 is mediocre. It's a minimum. It's dangerous. But it passes on because it's over the 50%. What God wants, what the teacher wants, what the parents want, 60%, 70%. Why not 80%? Why not 90%? 100% we will never achieve. I have said that before. In this case, it's the same thing. We will never achieve it 100%, but we will try. We will never give up. We will try. We'll continue. Never be disappointed. So that's what I think on the subject. Abdul Baha has written that teachers should become incarnate lights. How do we become incarnate light? It's the same answer. In the absolute, it is impossible. If in absolute terms, impossible. Of course, in the writings, they give us such high goals, such high aims. But if you cannot reach that very, very highest spot of 100%, it's the same thing that I've just said. Don't be discouraged, because you will never reach that point, 100%, in absolute terms. But in relative terms, it's again the same story. It's the mediocre minimum and the highest possible attainment, as close as possible to perfection. How do I develop the virtue of patience? I wish I knew. Patience. Love. When there is love, there is patience. We have all had mothers. Mothers are very patient with their children. Why? Because they love the child. The fathers also love their children, but I'm afraid we as fathers are not very, very patient. But mothers are, because they have greater love, deeper love. Believe me, they do. I think this is why Abdul Baha says the mothers are the primary educators of children. The fathers are educators, but they are educators number 2. And there is an educator number 3, and that's the teacher. See the difference between number 2 and number 3. A huge difference. There is a difference between number 1 and number 2 as well. Because Abdul Baha says the primary educator is the mother. So their love is also even more than the love of the father. Although the father, God knows, loves very deeply, no question about that. He's ready to give his life just as much as the mother wants to give her life. But the mother has something just a little bit more than what the fathers are. Yeah, because they have a more tender heart. So I think the answer is love. The Guardian, in one of the letters written on his behalf in 1942, stated that the hardest and the noblest task in the world today is to be a true Baha'i. What do you think are the most important steps to take to carry out this task successfully? You know my answer. I just shared with you my answer. I believe in my bones that the first duty of every one of us sitting in this hall is teaching the cause. I believe in my bones that teaching the cause is the panacea, the cure-all for all problems in the community. If there is any differences among the friends, it is because we are not teaching. If we feel that, there are no people who are interested in the cause in our little town or in our city, it is because we are not teaching. If we have problems with our children, it's because we are not teaching. They don't see us teaching. They follow our example. They see, as parents, we are not doing anything. They follow the same example. We have problems in the families. We lose our youth because we are not doing our duty. And believe me, our children will be lost if we don't set the example ourselves. They should see that we are engaged in the teaching work. I think this is my one and only answer is that Baha'u'llah has given us a blessing, a gift, by placing on our shoulders the gift of teaching his cause. And he has abolished a professional clergy. And he has set up the administrative order. And even the administrative order and its institutions, the first thing he tells them, teach the cause. There is a tablet revealed by Baha'u'llah that the Baha'is call Lawh Baytul Adl, the tablet of the House of Justice. How do we balance service to the faith with all the demands of children and family life? My dear friend, do you think that Baha'u'llah is cruel? He's asking us to do something which is impossible? Do you think so? It's not true. He's asking us something which he knows is practical. So the problem is our understanding is wrong. There is absolute no conflict between family life, between professional life, between active Baha'i life. There is no conflict. We have to find the time. It is our duty to work out this balance between all these duties. Do you think teaching needs special time, special evenings? Yes, if you want to extend hospitality in your home and meet contact, that takes time. That I agree. But teaching generally, never let a day pass without mentioning the faith to anybody. Take this one. Do you think this takes time off your professional work, off your family responsibilities? No, of course not. It is a consciousness, it is an awareness that I must have when I wake up in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, I should think with a prayer perhaps, oh God, this is a new day, assist me, help me, guide me. Let me see people, let me recognize their readiness, let me mention the faith. In my mixing, in my association with people, in my office, when I even go to my grocery, to buy my grocery, any time that I am mixing with people, I should be aware, I have my duty. I have to mention the faith. I have to find a way of mentioning the faith. If, for example, one way of starting the conversation would be, oh, I read in the news this morning, or I saw on television such and such. Isn't that a pity that such a thing can happen in the world today? According to my religious beliefs, it should be thus and thus. Your religious beliefs? Yeah, I'm a Baha'i. This is a very simple conversation. You have mentioned the faith. What is Baha'i? You have the opportunity. The person may not be interested at all. Baha'i doesn't mean anything. He is not ready. Continue. You still have another, let us say, 10 hours of that day free. You can still have other opportunities. But this should be your inner prayer, inner request, inner supplication to God, to Baha'u'llah. Give me an opportunity. I am waiting. Please give me an opportunity. I will use wisdom. But we have to do it. And I'm sure that God will assist us, because without His help, it is impossible. In Ruhi Book 1, it uses a quote, "Whoso hath failed to recognize Him will have condemned himself to the misery of remoteness, a remoteness which is utter nothingness and the essence of the nethermost fire." As a tutor of seekers and new believers with non-Baha'i spouses, this can be a very sensitive topic of discussion. How do we tactfully explain this? You remember that tablets specially revealed by Baha'u'llah, the people who wrote to him, the people he was dealing with, were mostly Muslims. The faith had not yet spread all over the world. It has not yet touched the Western world. It had not yet gone into all parts of the Pacific. It had not reached the Pacific Islands. Nowhere. And not all the parts of Asia, I mean, nor of the Pacific. It was the Middle East, that was all. These people were Muslims. He had to use terminology that they understood. They understood that hell was fire. So he uses the word fire so that they can understand what he means. But as Baha'is in his teachings, there is no such thing as fire in the next world. Fire is part of the mineral world. How can something belonging to the mineral world suddenly exist in the next world, in the realms on high? It's impossible. This is an example. In other words, what does fire do? It burns. It's painful. That's what he's saying. I mean, that's what Muhammad had in mind when he spoke about fire. That's what maybe the Old Testament exactly meant when they spoke about fire in the next world. So you have to remember that these may be nothing but analogies. They are not to be taken literally. So these things we have to bear in mind. So to me, what he means here when he speaks about to the misery of remoteness, remoteness is fire, nearness is heaven. Abdul Baha, when some of the pilgrims, especially from the United States, would sing the hymn, "Nearer, my God, to Thee," oh, he loved it so much. When pilgrims would come to the United States, from the United States, with this hymn, he would ask them when we enter the shrine, "I want you to chant this hymn in the shrine. Nearer, my God, to Thee." That's the whole purpose of life, of a Baha'i life, is to get nearer to God. Remoteness from God is hell. Nearness to God is heaven. So we must understand these terminologies. If we are instructed to teach the faith 365 days, what happens on days when we are only around Baha'is, such as being here at Llewellyn? Yeah. It's a very good question, by the way. Yeah. I'll tell you a little story. Soon after the election of the House of Justice, I came to the United States on a visit with my children, with Violette, of course. When I was at Green Acre, the committee there asked me to give a pep talk on teaching the faith. So I gave a talk. Among the things that I said, two things. I said that Shoghi Effendi says that we should not miss a single day. We have to teach the faith every single day. What the quotation that I read to you. Second thing I said that those of us who are serving at the World Center have been deprived of the blessing of teaching the cause, because that was the policy of Baha'u'llah. It was the same thing during the ministry of Abdul Baha. It was the same thing during the ministry of Shoghi Effendi. And so far, it is still the same policy as before. I said this. Now, I finished my talk. I saw after the talk, as I was leaving the hall with my family, I saw a dear woman, thin, small, elderly. I'm not very tall myself, but she was up to here. She pulled herself. He said, "Mr. Nakhjavani, I want to ask you a question." Now we are leaving the hall. "I want to ask you a question." I said, "Yes, please." He said, "Why did you say that you are deprived from the blessing of teaching the cause of God in the Holy Land? Why did you say that?" I said, "Because this is the policy of the House of Justice, continues to be the same as I explained." He said, "No, this is not true." Now, see what she said. Believe me, she put me to shame. She said, "I have heard that the Universal House of Justice gives everyone who is serving at the World Center 4 weeks every year. And during those 4 weeks, they can go anywhere. They don't have to remain in Israel. They can go anywhere." Why do you say this? The House of Justice is giving you freedom. You have 28 days free. You are now in the United States. You are free. I never thought of this. I said, wow, she's right. She's absolutely right. I should have been thinking of teaching the cause during those few days that I am in the United States. Because this is a free country. I should have done this. And I wasn't aware of it. God knows, I thanked her so much. I said, "You are right and I am wrong." Then she said, "You know, Mr. Nakhjavani, I am here at Greenacre. It is as if I am in prison. I'm supposed to teach the cause every day, and I'm here with all Baha'is. What's the use of it? I have decided, as soon as I leave Greenacre, from now on, for the period of 1 week while I have been away, I should teach the course twice instead of once. I was asked by someone, why should I join the Baha'i faith rather than just being a good person and doing good deeds? She subsequently joined the Unitarians. What is a compelling answer? It depends on the person. One answer might be good for one person, the same answer might not be good for another person. You have to use your wisdom. If this person has joined the Unitarians, I think it's very good. At least the Unitarians have a more or less open attitude towards others. At least it's good. At least this person does not say, I have decided to become an atheist. So I think when you're speaking to this person, you should say, of course, you are free. You want to do this. I'm so glad you go to the Unitarians. I've heard some wonderful things about the Unitarians. Be positive about it. But the point to make, I think, very briefly I'm making the point that the reason why a Baha'i is a Baha'i is not because only of good deeds. It is because I am recognizing the light that has come to the world, the source of energy and force that has been infused in humanity. A manifestation of God has come. There is a God. I have an immortal soul. God sends messengers. Baha'u'llah has come at this time for the unity of the planet. There is a process of evolution in humanity. It has reached a point when it has to have universal peace. And God has sent now a manifestation of God for the establishment of the universal peace and a plan how this should be done. Jesus also spoke about world loving everybody, but he did not produce any plan for how this universal peace should be established. Now this is today, mankind is approaching maturity, so we have this new manifestation. So recognizing him is like going out into light, into the sun, and receiving the rays of the sun. Now, of course, I can be in my room and say, I'll do only good deeds and so on for others, but I don't want that light to come in. Maybe I even close the window. That's not right. So that's why it's important to recognize the source of this light and commit and perform good deeds. And Baha'u'llah says, if it is good deeds alone, it's not the same as having the recognition plus the deeds. These two should be together. Now, you can think of other things. You pray about it, God will inspire you. True loss, Baha'u'llah says, true loss is for him who has spent his days without knowing himself. It is true, we have to know ourselves. But in the writings, it is very clearly explained. You know this adage that we have in Greek philosophy, know thyself. And people think that it is possible to really know oneself. This matter has been discussed in the writings of Abdul Baha very clearly. He says, it is impossible for any man to understand the true essence of himself. He makes a distinction between essence and attributes. It's impossible. The essence is the soul. The soul is a ray from God. How can you know that ray? To really know you. So know thyself, if it's taken in the sense of to know the reality, the essence within me which is my soul, I will never know that. Impossible. I cannot know myself the same way I cannot know God. It's impossible. The essence I cannot know. But what I can know is what the questioner is asking, my capacities, my weaknesses. I should examine myself. Baha'u'llah says, bring yourself to account each day before thou art brought to a reckoning. حاسب نفسك في كل يوم قبل أن تحاسب. Bring yourself to account. By bringing myself to account, I begin to understand myself. To understand, why did I lie? Why did I not tell the truth? Why do I feel jealous about so-and-so and the other sir? Why do I think meanly that I am better than this other person and the other? I have to bring to account each day. He doesn't say once a week. He says every day. I have to do that. That's the way that I come to know myself. I see my trespasses. I see my weaknesses. Shoghi Effendi says in one of his letters, we all have weak points. Things that go into my heart, I always say, these words should be written in gold. I think these words should be written in gold. There is no exception. You cannot say you have no weak points. I'm sorry, I disagree with you. You do have weak points. I'm not going to have an argument with you. But whoever you are, you have weak points. Those weak points you have to discover, rectify, adjust yourself, correct yourself. We do the opposite. When we look at others, we look at their weak points instead of at ourselves to see our weak points. What do we see in ourselves? Most of the time, the strong points. When we look at others, we look at their weak points. The exact opposite. So, my dear friends, we have to know ourselves in the sense of knowing our weaknesses, because we have them. We're not exempt. We're not saints. We can never be saints. Maybe we can acquire certain saintly qualities, but not a saint. If we become a saint, that's Abdul Baha only. In one of the tablets of Abdul Baha, every Baha'i must mention the greatest name once a day at least. Which one is it? Should it be Ya Baha'u'llah or something else? In which position we should say it? I think what is meant here is Allahu Abha. It's also in the Kitab Aqdas. Of course, we can use the word Ya Baha'u'llah as well. What I think Abdul Baha must have meant was to turn to Baha'u'llah and call upon him to help us. You can say Allahu Abha, can say Ya Baha'u'llah. There is no special position. The main thing is your heart, how you turn your heart to Baha'u'llah, with humility, with sincerity, with deep love. That is important. The position, how you do it, is left. Now, when it comes to saying 95 times Allah Akbar, Baha'u'llah has specific instructions. Have ablutions, sit down, repeat 95 times Allahu Akbar. When we say our Allahu Akbar for 95 times each day, what should be the thinking about? My dear, if we have to be in a prayerful attitude, naturally we should consider this as a prayer. Allahu Akbar, it's a form of prayer. It's a prayer of praise and thanksgiving. Allahu Akbar. What does Allahu Akbar mean? God is most glorious. God is all glorious. We are praising God. Baha is glorious. So we are praising the glory of God. It's a form of turning our hearts to Baha'u'llah. This is my understanding. What advice might you give to Baha'i youth attempting to choose their occupation and professional path in today's world? How can they maintain a spiritual perspective in their life choices in today's unstable and insecure material world? I think that in the choice of any occupation, in the choice of any professional path, it is very important, I think, for the children, the junior youth, the adolescents who are going now to university or on their way to university, with the help of their parents, to determine what is their personal inclination. That's very important. Each one of us is different from the person sitting next to us. We are very special. Each one of us is different. And you can imagine the unlimited number of creatures that God has. Everyone is different. What a power. What a power He has, really, to do this sort of thing. But it is true, and this is not my opinion, it is in the writings of Abdul Baha. He clearly says that. Therefore, identifying the inclination is very important. Of course, the primary person is the child, it's the student himself. Our children themselves. But we must help them. We must observe them to see where is the inclination. I had two friends, they were twins in the university. One of them was studying civil engineering. The other twin, was studying medicine. You know what they both told me? They said, I'm doing civil engineering because my father ordered me that I should become a civil engineer. The twin brother said, I too am studying medicine because my father ordered me to. But what were they? Because I was close to both of them. What were their inclinations? The one who was an engineer, studying engineering, was a musician. Had his guitar, he was composing music. That's what he was doing. The one who was wanting to become a doctor was a poet. Believe me, he knew more about Shakespeare's style and Shakespeare's plays and so on than students who were studying English literature. Because that was his love. But he was forced by a father who was stupid, definitely. You study medicine, you study civil. This doesn't work. So the individual child should decide with the help of his parents, providing that the parents act wisely, intelligently. You see, but I think that's very important. And when a decision is taken, to see how this decision will be of help to the world of humanity. I think I have said this before, that once Abdul Baha was asked, what is Baha'i? Well, what is the definition of Baha'i? He said, a Baha'i is a lover of humanity. What a definition that is. Shoghi Effendi says the pivot of the revelation of Baha'u'llah revolves around one principle, the oneness of mankind. In other words, the whole purpose of the faith of God is to establish the oneness of mankind. There is even a letter from the pen of written on behalf of Shoghi Effendi, in which he says, the faith of God itself is an instrument. The faith of God is a means to an end, not an end in itself. We serve the cause because it is through the cause that the welfare of humanity will be made secure. Even the cause of God has one goal: to achieve universal peace, universal happiness, universal prosperity, universal progress for the welfare of humanity. So whenever we decide what should our children study, discuss this principle of being a means for the promotion of the welfare of humanity through the profession that the child decides to study and pursue, as I said, with the help of the wisdom of their parents. What is the appropriate reaction when inadvertently one comes across the portrait of Baha'u'llah on the internet? I must explain this question about the internet and the portrait of Baha'u'llah. You know, when Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople, in Edirne, as you know, this portrait that we have in the archives was taken at that time when Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople. The same time when Abdul Baha is sitting as a young man that was taken at the same time. Same time when the purest branches is the picture of taken. The same time when the greatest holy leaves portrait at that time was taken. All this was in Adrianople. Now, the photographer at that time, now we have texts on that, it's not just out of a historian of the Baha'i faith, no, it's a text of Abdul Baha's tablet. When when Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople, the photographer took one shot, and then he wasn't sure whether it was a good shot. He wanted to make 100% sure. He asked for permission to have another shot. He took 2 shots. All right, Baha'u'llah did not mind. He produced the photographs to Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah did not approve one and approve the other. The one that's in the archives is the one that he has approved. Then, because it had been there, prints had been made. Maybe the family asked, this I don't know, but prints were made of both photographs, both shots. And because the family who were firm in the covenant knew that Baha'u'llah did not like the second one, they never gave a copy of that to the friend. Because in those days, in the early days, Baha'is who would come on pilgrimage, who had served the cause, would be given a copy of the portrait of Baha'u'llah. So we had portraits of Baha'u'llah of the first shot given to pilgrims in the Holy Land by the members of the Holy Family, more particularly by the greatest holy leaf. And there are still some original portraits of Baha'u'llah in Iran, in the homes of very few believers. I have seen actually the portrait in 2 homes in Iran. Very respectable, very devoted Baha'is who had this. And they don't show it to everybody because it was not the instruction of Abdul Baha or Shoghi Effendi. But they had it. All right, now, what about the other shot? The other shot was in the hands of the covenant-breaking section of the family. Mr. Miller, who, as you know, has attacked the faith and written books against the faith. What is the Baha'i faith, or The Baha'i Faith is the title of one of his books. He was in contact with the covenant breakers. The covenant breakers had the other portrait and they gave it to him. He published it in his book on very fine, good paper because he wanted others to make copies of it. And the others did make copies of it. And those who do not like our faith, those who are opposing our faith, immediately got hold of it. And they put it even on the internet. So what you see there is the copy, is that portrait that Baha'u'llah did not approve. Please remember this. And you can tell my story to anybody you like. Because this is based on a tablet revealed by Abdul Baha. Not the section about Miller and everything else. That is mine. But the first part about the two shots and all that. So I just giving you the historical background about these photographs. So what should be the appropriate reaction? That depends on you, as you like. You can look at it. You cannot want to look at it. That is your decision. God bless you. What can you tell us about the importance of agriculture and the future of its importance? I'll tell you a little story about my own life. How about that? I had a mother who was very devoted, and because she had a special relationship with the Greatest Holy Leaf, she went quite often to the Master's house. And I had just finished my secondary school, and I was planning to go to university. I'm not criticizing her, God forbid, but out of love, without telling me, she went one day to Shoghi Effendi and said that Ali is finished, he wants to go to university. What is the wish of Shoghi Effendi for him? What should he study? Shoghi Effendi answered, he said that this depends on his own choice, his own inclination. So that was no answer for her. She kept quiet, and then Shoghi Effendi continued. He said, Baha'u'llah has praised medicine, and he referred to it as the most noble of all sciences. If he is interested, it would be very nice in medicine. Another pause. He also praised agriculture. And if he is interested in agriculture, it will be in the spirit of the writings of Baha'u'llah. Pause. However, you tell him on my behalf, the important thing for him now is to perfect his English. That was all. That was the advice that he gave. She wrote to me immediately that this is what it is. I said, of course, first thank you very much, So I said I must try the same order. I had many friends in the medicine department of the university. I went to them and I said, I want to be with you, if you don't mind, as you go to these places, and tell me more about your work and the studies. And he took me to so many of the places, including morgues and things like that. I said, to me, that was not my interest. So I came to my conclusion, that's not it, definitely. Because he said, inclination, that's not my inclination. So I went to friends of mine in the agricultural department. And again, for a day or two, I had one or two friends there. They showed me their books, they showed me the places where they are working and this and that. No, I wasn't interested. I didn't know what to do. I really did not have much interest in anything. I never saw my father. It was my mother who brought us up, my brother and I, who was 2 years older. And so she had really injected or infused in our hearts, in our souls, the love of the cause. Baha'u'llah says mothers are primary educators. She had done that. So when I really thought about it, I said, really, I love this cause so much. I love Baha'u'llah. I must do something that would be useful for the cause of Baha'u'llah. Since Shoghi Effendi said that, tell him that his English should be good, why don't I go for English literature? And that's what I did. This story is finished, but the reason why I shared it with you was that section about agriculture. That Shoghi Effendi, immediately after medicine, he mentioned agriculture. It is a very important subject. It is so important even today, maybe today more than any other time, for the economy, the worldwide economy. If agriculture is pursued properly, seriously, and not considered as, oh, that's for farmers, not for me, I'm this, I'm that. This is a very vital thing. But Abdul Baha says, for world economy, you should start with the village. Now, the village is farming. So, economy in every country, well, some countries don't even have land, adequate land for agriculture. But for most countries, there is enough land for agriculture in order to develop that. So I think that agriculture is a noble thing. It's a noble field of study. Shoghi Effendi, according to Hand of the Cause Leroy Aywas, spoke of the need for every Baha'i to fight with himself and conquer himself, and only after conquering himself can become a true instrument for the service of the cause of God. Would you please share your personal reflections on this? Of course, the outward meaning of what Leroy has written is very clear. He's talking about the ego. He's talking about conquering the ego, self and passion, corrupt desires. This is what he's talking about, conquering. Now, but he gives the example of himself. This is out of kindness. We spoke about Shoghi Effendi. I read to you that tablet by heart and summarized it for you about Abdul Baha talking about Shoghi Effendi as a mere child, speaking about the future of this child. His might, his power, his authority. His face, luminous face, his pen, how his work will illumine the whole world. That was Shoghi Effendi. Do you think Shoghi Effendi belonged to our realm as human beings like you and me? No. I don't say he was Abdul Baha, or he didn't want anybody to think that he was Abdul Baha or a second Abdul Baha. No. Of course, we cannot compare him with Baha'u'llah, that's very true. But it does not mean that he belongs to this world of dust that you and I belong to. It was a different category of holy beings, of imams, who were of that category as well, of the successors of manifestations of God. He was a successor. He was the head of our faith. Now, when you read some answered questions, you see that such educators, and Shoghi Effendi certainly falls in that category. They say, someone has asked, Laura Barney has asked Abdul Baha, he says, we read that these manifestations of God are saying that God rebuked me because I have done this and I have done that. He's not happy with me. So they ask Abdul Baha, how is it? Manifestations of God are sinless, are infallible, are pure. How is it that God is rebuking them? Answer, this is out of kindness. of the manifestation of God. They ascribe this to them so that their own people will not feel bad. What they mean is that he's rebuking me, he's rebuking you too. But the manifestation of God, the messenger of God, the holy ones of God, they don't make mistakes to be rebuked by God. Of course not. This is out of kindness, out of wisdom. So you are asking my personal opinion. I think that Shoghi Effendi was telling Leroy, control your own ego, my dear brother. That's what he was saying. He attributed it to himself. Should one conceal the faults of others even if they are harming to other individuals or the community? Of course not. There is a difference between two individuals, and there is a difference between what is harming the community. Two individuals, you're harming me, I have to forgive. It's between you and me. But when it comes to the community, it's different. There are institutions in the faith, I should find a way to report this matter, that this is harming the cause. There are auxiliary board members, there are assistant auxiliary board members, there are local spiritual assemblies, there are national spiritual assemblies, there are councillors. Now all these represent institutions. And I should make it a point to report such things and tell them what I have seen, this is not backbiting at all. This is good for... Now, the difference between the individual and institutions, which has come so many times in our discussion, is this, that we as individuals cannot, should not, ever apply justice. Justice in the sense of social justice. Application of social justice in the form of punishment, for example, is the duty of institutions, not of individuals. The duty of individuals is mercy. The duty and responsibility of institutions is justice. Justice I cannot do, I must not do. It would be retaliation. It would be vengeance. Vengeance and retaliation have nothing to do with Baha'i life. They are the opposite of Baha'i life. There is no such thing as vengeance, that I should exercise vengeance, or I should exercise what I consider to be just. No, 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 no. My duty is to forgive. Compassion, mercy. The only institution, if we call God as an institution, the only institution that can be both merciful and just is God, only. The duty of institutions is not to be merciful. The duty of institutions is to be just. The duty of the individual is to be merciful. We mix the two. They're two different things. It's only God who is both just and merciful. He knows, only He knows when to be just, when to be merciful. Friends, there is a letter from Shoghi Effendi in which he says, a God, I'm almost quoting the exact words as I remember them, a God who is only just is not a perfect God. A God who is only merciful is not a perfect God. A God who is both merciful and just is a perfect God. This is Baha'i theology, if you want to call it. Who is saying this? Shoghi Effendi, in a specific letter published. So, When it comes to question of reporting to the institutions, because it's not my duty to say anything about anybody, but backbiting, to talk about it in the community, that's wrong. My duty is not to be just, my duty is to be merciful. But when it comes to the interests of the cause, what do? I go to the institution which has to apply justice. I go to the local assembly. I go to the institutions who can report eventually to the local assembly or the national assembly. I have done my duty. I see there is harm for the cause, I am reporting. Now it is their duty. From that point onwards, I have finished. I have no other duty. We are asking the same question in different words. I think this is what was the beginning of the establishment of the first Universal House of Justice. How did it permeate and change the Baha'i community? I think before anything else, I told you that I felt also, and I saw that my fellow members were feeling exactly the same thing. The members of the House of Justice, I can tell you, as members, I'm sure I am right, because I heard it from the other members just as I felt myself. The House of Justice at the beginning really did not know what to do. Well, all right, they have elected us, what are we going to do? They did not know, but they trusted in Baha'u'llah. They knew that if they purified the motives of their conduct, if they arose nobly, sacrificially, and selflessly, divine assistance will come. They knew that if they were united, divine confirmation will be even stronger. I have been members of local assemblies. I have been members of national assemblies. What I experienced on the House of Justice was different from what I experienced on local and national assemblies. Different. I felt that these men, these 9 members, truly felt they were 9 brothers. They loved one another, all of them. They were ready to forgive the weaknesses that each one, of course, had. There was a bond of love binding these 9 men. You can have the same thing if you are on the local assembly, on the national assembly. But this came so naturally. This bond was something like this. The happiness of one was the happiness of all. If there was good news for one family, it was as if it was good news for all the members of the 9 members, the families of the 9 members. That's how it was. The sorrow of one was the sorrow of all. Such was this affinity, this affection that existed between the 9 members, because there was a genuine effort that we should love one another, and we succeeded in loving one another as 9 brothers. Believe me, when the members sat the first week, the first few days around the table, it was as if I was talking to my own brother. The others felt exactly the same thing. This bond, this unity, this harmony is like a magnet. It attracts divine blessings on the body. And I think that's why this Universal House of Justice continues to be the source of strength, the source of guidance to the entire Baha'i world. The second is sexist. By that he means no woman on the Universal House of Justice. I have not yet attended a conference, a summer school, that they have not asked this question. And I said to myself, thank God this has not come yet. But it was, I think, last night that I realized, no, there is no exception. Well, the question of the membership of the Universal House of Justice, they asked Abdul Baha, they asked Shoghi Effendi, they have asked several times the Universal House of Justice. There may be a letter on the agenda of the Universal House of Justice, someone who has also asked this question, they are discussing it now. This has been with us all the time. Now, Shoghi Effendi finally said, the answer that Abdul Baha gave is the answer that we should give. And this is the answer that is given usually. What is it? What is it? A time will come when humanity will understand why. Now they don't understand. This is the answer that Abdul Baha said. Now Ali is adding a footnote. I think because we have not reached maturity. The human race has not reached maturity. Our judgment today as the human race is warped, is limited, it's elementary. It is rather childish. We haven't reached that maturity yet. When we reach maturity, and Baha'u'llah has said, sign number 1, sign number 2, sign number 3. He has given us 3 signs for the maturity of the human race. It has not happened yet. The 3 signs have not yet been realized. So we are in this stage of pre-maturity. So how Abdul Baha says, you will not understand this, in my opinion. Wait, when the time comes, you'll see, now I understand. Now there may be some very mature people, and I'm sure there are many among you here who know they understand, who understand already. God bless you. You may have reached that point that you understand. Fine. But it's not the majority of the human race. So if you start talking about it to non-Baha'is, they will not understand. And if you talk to some Baha'is who are very limited in their understanding, you have to say, please, wait, this is what Abdul Baha says. You accept Abdul Baha. He is this mystery of God. He is telling us, wait, please, why don't you wait? We will reach that point. So that would be my take. Please tell us your memories of the formation of the International Council and how the preparations were made for the creation of the first Universal House of Justice in 1963. You see, you have to remember that there are 2 types in our history. There were 2 types of International Council. There was an appointed International Council and there was an elected International Council. The appointed International Council was made mostly, the membership was mostly hands of the cause. And he created this body, Shoghi Effendi created this body, and he appointed them himself. At the very top of the list, when he names them, Ruhi Khanum is at the top of the list. Then the officers. That's how he announced it to the Baha'i world. It was not Mason Remy who was first. The first named by him was Ruhi Khanum. And she was to be his representative on the International Council. This appointed International Council never really met for business. Shoghi Effendi invited these members to come to Haifa, and he would give them personal assignments. Do this, do that. That's how it was. There was no consultation, no decision. The decision was taken by Shoghi Effendi himself in every single case. That was the appointed council. According to his advice that he had left, this appointed council had to become an elected council. This was possible only in 1961, while the appointed council took place in 1951, towards the end of 1950 and the beginning of 1951. This elected council came into being in 1961, and its term was 2 years only. And its duty was to help the hands of the cause in the Holy Land in their duties, particularly in connection with the international convention to be held in Haifa, as well as the Congress, the first Baha'i Congress to be held in London. That was their primary duty. Then there were secondary duties. For example, when Shoghi Effendi bought properties for the faith, there were some buildings on those properties. These buildings had rent to pay. So the International Council in the days of Shoghi Effendi and the elected council they kept accounts of the rents of these properties. There were not many properties, there were few properties. All of these properties were all demolished with the approval of the municipality of Haifa, because they all became part of the terraces that you have seen, the beautiful terraces. But if you look at the pictures of all of the mountain, Mount Carmel, before the terraces were built, you see there are some houses there. So these houses, some of them are 3-4 stories, and there were apartments. People were living in them. They had to pay rent. The rent had to be collected. Receipts had to be issued, etc., etc. So all these things were attended to by this the elected International Council. But their main job was to make arrangements with the municipality of Haifa to find a good hall, to see how many days this could be rented, how transportation could be arranged from hotels to come to this hall in Haifa. All these details had to be worked out by this elected council. So that was, and then for the Congress in London, the council was in contact continuously with the British National Spiritual Assembly. The decision where to have the Congress held was a decision taken after consultation between the NSA of the United Kingdom and the International Council. How to receive people, what hotels to reserve in London for Baha'is, how to allocate them, what information needed to be given to the people as they arrive, as these members of national assemblies, and then later on all the Baha'is were invited to come, and some 7,000 Baha'is came to that Congress in Albert Hall. So these were the duties, and they were not in contact with national assemblies, except the NSA of the British Isles only, in connection with that hall. That was all. The council itself did not have correspondence with anybody. Well, you see, at the time, we are now in 1963. Before 1963, the passing of Shoghi Effendi, and immediately after the passing of Shoghi Effendi, we had a letter. The Baha'i world received a letter from the conclave of the Hands of the Cause of God, saying that the election of the Universal House of Justice will take place in 1963. That was a great news for the whole world. And the dear, beloved Hands of the Cause of God, as I heard myself from a number of them, before coming to this decision, read and reread, studied and restudied the letters of Shoghi Effendi, and they felt that it was definitely the intention of Shoghi Effendi that the House of Justice should be held in 1963. And the decision was 100% correct, of course. So that was a very important decision of the hands of the cause of God. Obstacles that it faced in its early years, the obstacles were no money. The major one. Where is the office going to be? How many times are we going, will the members have to meet? These new members have families. They need houses. The House of Justice felt it necessary now to look for apartments, houses. Some of the members had children. So it could not be just a small flat. It should be a flat with several rooms for the children. So these were problems. And believe me, the funds were very, very low. There wasn't money, very little. Left over from the 10-year crusade and left over from the interregnum of the hands of the cause of God. Very little money left. Because the hands, God bless them, whatever funds Shoghi Effendi had left, and he had deliberately left some money with Ruhi Khanum, as if he knew when he was going to pass away. He especially opened a bank in London in his own name and in the name of Ruhi Khanum, with a document to say that when he passes away, the funds should be in the hand, placed at the disposition of Ruhi Khanum. He did all these things in London before he passed away. But let me give you just a little bit of background about the Dawnbreakers, because I think it's very important. When Shoghi Effendi released the Dawnbreakers, he had the intention of having a second volume. So he considered that what we have is volume 1, and there will be Dawnbreakers volume 2. And this is clearly stated in the early volumes of Baha'i World that were issued and published under his direction. But he never did it. That was his intention, his plan, but he didn't carry it out. Now, the facts are that Nabil's narrative has a lot of details about the dispensation of the Bab, and because he wrote this towards the end of the life of Baha'u'llah, the period of the ministry of Baha'u'llah is not as detailed as the section on the Bab, because it was current. You know, we don't think that the current things perhaps are so important that they should be recorded. You know, maybe whatever was the reason. Of course, Nabil was firm to the very end, there's no question about that, but for any good reason, or it's very short period. It's a very short section of his narrative. Maybe that was the reason. He didn't say anything. Shoghi Effendi did not explain why he did not issue volume 2. Never said anything. We are guessing. That's all we are doing. So maybe I say, because it wasn't as elaborate, as complete with many details as volume 1. But what he did, he wrote God Passes By. He took everything which was in Nabil in that section and put it his own God Passes By. And then he supplemented that with anyone that had written history of the ministry of Baha'u'llah that he considered to be correct, and he included it in his God Passes By. So that may be the reason why we don't have a second volume of the Dawnbreakers. This is only my humble, limited understanding. When Mr. Bagliuzzi was writing The King of Glory, as our dear Hopa was referring to it this morning, he needed to see everything that he could. So the section on Baha'u'llah was sent to Mr. Bagliuzzi also. He put as much as he wanted in his King of Glory. So my dear friends, there are no more secrets. You have it all. Don't worry about that. In God Passes By, in Bagliuzzi's book, everything is there. Was Shoghi Effendi always the sign of God on earth, or only after he became a guardian? It's a very difficult question to answer. Yeah. You see, many of the believers, old believers, during the lifetime of Abdul Baha, knew very well that Shoghi Effendi, Abdul Baha's eldest grandson, was going to be successful. It was obvious. But not for everybody, generally. For those who had sensitive hearts, tender hearts, felt that the special relationship between this young Shoghi Effendi and Abdul Baha is something very different. And I'm sure that you have read The Priceless Pearl of Ruhiya Khanum. One of the American believers wrote a letter to Abdul Baha that it is the impression of many friends in the United States that a child is going to lead the world. And we would like to know whether such a child does exist or not. Dr. Yunus Khan Afrukhte, in his memoirs of the 9 years in Akka, he deals with this. There is a whole chapter about this. And Abdul Baha, he says, yes, a child, it's a real child. And then there is a tablet revealed by him. I can't remember now the translation that Ruhiya Khanum included in her Priceless Pearl. But it begins with a sentence like this: yes, that child is born and is living. And then Abdul Baha speaks about the future accomplishments of this child. That child was Shoghi Effendi. He was a child at that time when this correspondence took place. He was his first eldest son. So he says that his future is glorious. I can't remember the exact words, but I remember some of the original words, if I may quote them for those who speak Persian and Arabic. إن ذلك الطفل مولود وموجود وسترين في الاستقبال لأنه يظهر بكل قدرة وقوة يتلألأ وجهه تلألؤا يتنور به الآفاق. A summary of it. I'm not quoting, maybe I'm missing some sentences with my poor memory. But he says, yes, this child exists. He has a glorious future. He will appear with such authority and strength and dominion and power unequaled by anyone in the world. It's about Shoghi Effendi. His face is so radiant that the light of his face, the reflection of his face, will bring to light or impart light on all creation. All horizons will be illumined through his knowledge, through his power. Those of us, I don't know how many of you have been in the presence of Shoghi Effendi. Oh, my dear, what a face Shoghi Effendi had. It is exactly what Abdul Baha predicted, exactly. It was enough for Shoghi Effendi just to look here. It's not human. It's different from the looks of others. From all points of view, physically his face was beautiful, attractive, charming, at the same time very kind, very gentle, very sweet, unique. Believe me, even when he walked, he didn't walk like us human beings, or with such authority. Even if you looked at him from his back, you knew this cannot be just a human being. Now, I'm giving you my assessment because I had the great privilege of being in his presence. As a child, as a junior youth, as a youth, then I left the Holy Land and went to Iran. From Iran, we went to Africa with Mr. and Mrs. Banani. And then there was this election and I had to come back to the Holy Land. But during the period when I was pioneering in Africa, I had the great privilege of an invitation from Shoghi Effendi to go on pilgrimage. So as an adult, as a full adult, I had the wonderful opportunity of being with Shoghi Effendi. And I'm describing to you my feelings. Obviously, I loved him. But I tell you something. What I saw of Shoghi Effendi in 1939 when I left, 1938, 39, when I left the World Center to go to Iran, when I saw him in 1957, I became so sad. The young Shoghi Effendi was no more young. He was slightly bent. All his hair had become gray. His age was hardly yet 60. He was 59 when I saw him. It made me so sad. Shoghi Effendi, the erect Shoghi Effendi, the powerful Shoghi Effendi that I knew. Now he was old, but to be only 60, not yet 60, and to be like that, that's why he worked so hard for so long. And as he said, his fingers were tired. Why? Because he was typing. God passes by was typed by him, and he was not a typist as such with 10 fingers, with 3, 4 fingers, that's all. Tick, tick, tick. The whole book. You know how long it takes. Late into the night, he was still working, typing. Prayers and meditations of Baha'u'llah, all typed by him. Nabil's narrative, all typed by him with all the footnotes. All his major messages were all typed by him. He said, my fingers are tired. My nerves are tired. My eyes are tired. During this period while I wasn't there and I saw him, I said, not the same Shoghi Effendi. It was as if he was a broken Shoghi Effendi. I am telling you, it saddened me so much. Please tell us how Enoch Olinga accepted the faith and became deepened in it. Enoch Olinga was pretty young when he became a Baha'i. Already 2 African friends had accepted the faith in Kampala, Uganda. He became the 3rd, but he was the first of his tribe. His tribe was Teso tribe in the eastern province of Uganda. He was not living a happy life. He was drinking most of the time. The best place to find him was to find him in one of the bars in Kampala. His family was in shambles. His wife, he already had one son when I met him. His wife was at the point of divorcing him because he was so unreliable in everything he was doing. He was losing his job at the same time, which was a government job. One day, I was driving the car, and Crispian Kajubi, who was the first Baha'i in Uganda, was sitting next to me. And we were going to our home for a few minutes of discussion about the faith. And as we were driving, Crispian Kajubi told me, stop, stop. And then he pulled the window down and called Enoch. Enoch was walking on the sidewalk. He called him, Enoch, Enoch. Enoch looked. He said, come along, come along. This is the man I told you about. Why don't you come? So Enoch accepted. So he opened the door and sat. That was my first time I ever met this dear soul. So I welcomed him, and I told him that we were going to our home, and if he wished, I could drive him to our home, and we'll spend some time together, about maybe half an hour or so, and then I will take him to his office, because I don't want him to be late to going to his office. He was going to walk to his office. So he said yes, and so he came to our home. Our home was the home of Mr. Banani, Mr. and Mrs. Banani. And so we had our first discussion about the faith with dear Enoch. And this thing went on, not every day, but many days during the week. And then a time came when Mr. and Mrs. Banani wanted to go on pilgrimage. And we had this small Baha'i group, not yet an assembly, in Kampala. So we took the decision as a Baha'i group to write Shoghi Effendi and send a letter through the Bananis to Haifa to be presented to the beloved guardian. And the letter stated that we were going to have such a kind of a meeting, public meeting, in our home, inviting as many African seekers as possible that we had met, and that we would plan our meeting on such and such a day, which is a Sunday. And we understand that he normally would go to the shrine of the Bab at around 4 o'clock of Israel time, and we will time our meeting at the same time. Our request would be, would he kindly pray for the success of this meeting? That was the substance of the letter. Of course, the Bananis went. One of the first things they did was to present the letter. Shoghi Effendi said, yes, I will do so. I will pray. So now you can imagine what was happening in Kampala. We were so excited. We thought that that's going to be a major teaching, meeting, a proclamation of the cause in Uganda, and so on and so forth. So we arranged for as many of our seekers during this period to all come to the house. The Banani house, or the Alí Nakhjavani house, was the only home in Kampala that had the capacity to receive guests. I remember the room was full. All the chairs was were full. People were sitting on the carpet. People were standing. There was no seat, no more carpet. So we started the meetings. Prayer, reading one of the talks of Abdul Baha, a talk on the faith, question period, and the new African believers did not realize how important this thing was. But the only 3 pioneers who were there, because the Bananis were in Haifa, were Violette and myself, and a British pioneer by the name of Philip Hainsworth. The 3 of us were the only pioneers, and the room was full with Ugandans. We were expecting mass conversion. We were expecting everybody in the room to become Baha'i. Shoghi Effendi was praying, we thought, for this meeting. It was an exceptional meeting. The last question was asked. Nothing happened. You can imagine the disappointment of the 3 of us, especially Philip and I, who had now to drive many of these Ugandans who needed transportation back to their homes. We brought them with such excitement, now with disappointment. They are going back home. Well, we came back and were seated together in the room there, and we were wondering what happened. Maybe Shoghi Effendi did not pray. Maybe something had happened. As we were talking, there was a knock at the door. It was dark already. I think it was around 7:30 in the evening, and it was dark. We opened the door, and there is this young man. It's Enoch Olinga. He said, "Do you mind if I come in?" "Of course." "You can come in." "Yes, you can come in." He said, "I have a few questions." I did not want to ask the questions then, but if I may, I would like to ask some questions that I would like to know the answers. So we said, "Of course, sit down." He sat down and he asked a few questions, mostly on prophecies and the verses of the New Testament, particularly about the return of Christ. That was the thing that worried him and concerned him. So we tried our best. We answered. He heard all the questions. He didn't argue. He accepted everything. There was silence. And then he said, "I have one more question. What does one do to become a Baha'i?" I don't think he noticed, and I never checked with him to see if he had noticed or not. I looked at my wife and I saw tears in her eyes. I looked at Philip. Philip had tears in his eyes. I realized I was crying myself. This was the culmination of days and days of hard work and arrangements and this and that, with this one question. I'm sure that Enoch, did he notice? He did not notice. I never double-checked with him. So it was not easy to become a Baha'i in those days. Believe me, the work in Uganda was under the direction of the National Spiritual Assembly of the British Isles. We had no declaration cards of anything, nothing. The instructions of the National Assembly was, if anybody wants to become a Baha'i, he should write a letter to us, to London. There was no local assembly, there was nothing. We were concerned because it was a time when in Uganda there was political turmoil. The local population were talking about independence. They did not want to be under the Foreign Affairs or Colonial Office or whatever it was in those days for a country like Uganda. They wanted independence. So now come the Baha'is and they have to write a letter again to London? He swallowed it. He accepted it, no problem. We explained to him that he should write in his own way a letter expressing his feelings towards the faith as he wants. And all he has to do is to deliver the letter to us and we will send it. He thanked us and he left the room. We were so rejoiced, so pleased that here was this dear soul. In the morning, at 7 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock at the door. We opened the door and there is Enoch. He had written his letter. He delivered his letter in an envelope. We immediately sent the letter to London, to the British NSA, and the answer came very quickly, approving the membership of dear Enoch Olinga. So you see, dear Enoch was the fruit of the guardian's prayer. Although he was the fruit of the guardian's prayer and the third believer in Uganda, but it was just the beginning of the work of this dear man. He immediately began teaching the course, right in his office. He spoke the faith to his close friends. He had a few days of freedom from office work, his holiday, and he went back to his own people, Teso people. He started talking about the faith. You don't know, there is something new faith that has come to our country, he said. And then he started telling them about the teachings of the faith. People were interested, very interested. His parents had died. He only had an uncle. His uncle was deeply interested. His brother was interested. Other people were interested. He wrote us letters immediately by post. In those days, the mail system was very quick in Uganda. And we read his letters. He's all excited. He says, one of you must come here. They don't accept me. They say that we must see one of them. Tell them if they are interested in us, let them come here. So a few days later, Enoch himself came. And he said, this is the situation. So in our little Baha'i group, they said, okay, Ali, you have to do it. Because dear Philip was very busy in his office, and my wife could not go alone. So I was the logical final choice. So I prepared myself and I went. My dear, what I saw for the first time in this African village in Uganda is something that is so dear to my heart. I cannot tell you. Every single day, meeting these thirsty souls, these ready souls who drink in everything I say. Ask questions. Again, I talk, ask questions. Of course, at night I was exhausted. But I was so moved. I was praying to Baha'u'llah, grateful to Baha'u'llah, that there were such people in the world who were ready to become Baha'is. And that was the beginning. Now, Enoch became a member of the local spiritual assembly when Rizwan came. Enoch, soon after he became a Baha'i, as I told you, was teaching the cause in Uganda itself, in his office area, and his personal friends outside. Then we received a cable from Shoghi Effendi. The cable said that these new believers who have accepted the faith in Uganda, and there were now quite a number of them, I call on them to arise and pioneer. They were new believers, to arise and pioneer. And then he named the countries where they should settle. And among the countries was Cameroon in West Africa. We are in East Africa. Who would offer? There was some silence, some thinking, and so on. Some hands were raised. Among them was the hand of Enoch Olinga. And he said, I'm ready to go to the Cameroon Republic. Later, we asked Enoch, why did you choose the Cameroon Republic? He said, it's the farthest away from Uganda. That's why. Anyway, that was dear Enoch Olinga. He arose. Violette and I had the privilege of sitting in the car with him and driving him all the way from East Africa to the Cameroon Republic. Now, the incidents that happened on the way is a long, long story. But it was not an easy travel. Many difficulties. Mechanical, psychological, physical, all kinds of tests. At one point, Enoch had to walk because the car was broken, wouldn't move anymore. And I'm not a mechanic. So Enoch was going to walk to the nearest city. He had to walk 2 days in order to reach that city. And in between, there's nothing. So Violette and I remained in where the car was stuck, and Enoch went. He had a dream after the first day, because later on he told us that he was telling himself, what have I done? Why am I in this country here, somewhere near the Cameroon Republic? I've left my home, I've left my country. Was that right? You know, he had these thoughts. At night, tired as he was, he had a dream. He dreamt that he was in the mud, stuck in the mud himself. Then he saw Shoghi Effendi. Shoghi Effendi came and lifted him up and sat him next to him. He patted him on his leg. He said, I want you to know that I am very pleased with you. That was his dream. Dear Enoch woke up in the morning, remembered his dream, realized that he wasn't tired anymore. He was completely fresh and strong, no problem, ready to go anywhere. And that was a transformation, I think, in the life of Enoch Olinga. Another thing that really changed his attitude was the fact that he was away from everybody, from his friends, from his family, everything. Here he was in the Cameroon Republic, and he was teaching the cause every day, from morning till night. Suddenly, from the letters that he was sending to us, there are now 5 people, now there are 7 people, now there are 10 people, now there are 15 people, all young. They have accepted the pictures he sent. All these were reported to Shoghi Effendi. We encouraged Enoch to write to Shoghi Effendi. He wrote Shoghi Effendi. Sent some of these pictures to Shoghi Effendi. Shoghi Effendi answered by cable. He said, I call on the local believers in the Cameroon Republic, all of them young, all of them Cameroonian, to arise and go to the neighboring countries. And then he named them, just as he did in the first instance. But these were new babies. Now, Shoghi Effendi. These people arose. The means were found. Passports were issued. They went. They conquered these countries for Shoghi Effendi in the name of Baha'u'llah. He became a knight of Baha'u'llah because he had arrived in the Cameroon Republic, which was a virgin territory. He became a knight of Baha'u'llah. These youngsters were all became knights of Baha'u'llah. Can you imagine? Shoghi Effendi was so pleased. He gave him a title. He wrote him immediately a letter. He told him that I am giving you a title. You are from now on the father of victories. He was continuously encouraging him. So he was not only a pioneer to Cameroon, he was the knight of Baha'u'llah, now he was father of victories. And then soon after that, Shoghi Effendi passed away. But before he passed away, he sent a message to the Baha'i world, naming the last contingent of hands of the cause of God. And among them was Enoch Olinga, hand of the cause for Africa. Mr. Banani was the only hand of the cause for Africa. Enoch Olinga, William Sears, John Robarts. Now, instead of one hand, 4 hands for Africa. And Enoch Olinga was the first of the 3 in his message. In 6.5 years, this dear soul, from being just a nobody in Uganda, in Kampala, becomes a Baha'i, becomes a knight of Baha'u'llah, becomes father of victories, and the hand of the cause of God. That was Enoch Olinga. Would you please share any stories about dear Amoz Gibson? Amoz Gibson, I think, was not a saint, but was very close to be a saint. He was a beautiful soul. He had Indian, American Indian blood in his ancestry, American African blood, and white, but combined, all 3 of them. And he was a lover of Baha'u'llah and the cause. He just loved teaching. He pioneered while he was in the United States, inside the country. He went to these American Indian reservations in order to teach the cause. He was very successful. He was elected on the National Spiritual Assembly of the United States. When the members came for 1963 to Haifa for the election of the Universal House of Justice, he was there. He was, believe me, a pillar of strength spiritually. A wonderful speaker, and very selfless, devoted, and at the same time extremely brave and courageous, fearless in his teaching work. Believe me, whenever I was in his presence, I felt that, am I worthy to be in the presence of Amoz Gibson? Yes, beautiful soul. One of the quotations that he often used to quote is the one that I included in the selections that I made for you when I was talking about the teaching work, he used to repeat that all the time. To assist me, Baha'u'llah wrote, to assist me is to teach my cause. He didn't say it in this way. He said it with far greater emphasis. Faith, strong, love, devotion. This is how we should be. You want to assist Baha'u'llah? Teach this cause. That's what you should do. To me, really, I'm not exaggerating this. I think to me he was like a brother, a true brother. And of course, his death was a catastrophe, a tragedy that the House of Justice had to face. I must say the entire Baha'i world had to face. Can you please relate the story of how your father gave the message of the faith to Lev Tolstoy? He did not give the message to Lev Tolstoy. There is a whole history about Tolstoy. I will summarize it for you. I'm sure many of you already know it. Tolstoy, of course, was a great writer, a great poet, a great thinker, a great social reformer. And he had heard about the Baha'i faith and the Babi faith from Russians in St. Petersburg, because there was a group of professors in St. Petersburg. Now, we have a member of the National Spiritual Assembly of Russia among us here with his dear wife, who have joined us in this meeting. And I think I should give him the time to come and explain to us how Tolstoy heard about. Would you like to come and tell us a few words?
Sorry, I think I'm not qualified. To be perfectly honest.
I didn't hear you, but I think you are saying no. Now, please correct me if I say anything which is wrong. Right? That's the problem. Okay. So he had heard that there were a number of professors at Pomansky who translated Dawnbreakers into Russian, and others who were translating the writings of Baha'u'llah, knew about Baha'u'llah. There was a playwright by the name of Isabella Grinievskaya who had made a play, very successful play about the life of the Bab, which was not only played in Russia itself, but it was also played in Paris, translated into French and so on. So there was a lot of talk about the Babi faith and the Baha'is. So that's how he heard about it. He didn't hear about it from my father, surely not. Okay, now how did my father become involved in this? The friends in Ashgabat knew that Tolstoy now had heard about the faith and was slightly interested. So one or two of them tried to go and meet with him. But they did not know Russian well. They were Persians, and they spoke Russian with a Persian accent. And he says so in one of his letters. He says so. He says, someone came to see me, but he did not really know good Russian, and he was an Iranian and so on. So he heard more and more and more. He wrote a letter to an Egyptian. He was a priest, one of the ulamas, Sunni ulamas in Egypt, who knew Tolstoy. He even wrote to him in Egypt. He said, have you heard about the Baha'is? Who are they? Tell me more about them. Of course, he knew, because he had met Abdul Baha. So he wrote to him very positively about the Baha'i faith and Abdul Baha and so on. So this thing had been going on for some time. Now Abdul Baha wanted to really give him information about the texts so that he reads the writings himself. Now my father knew good Russian because he had studied in Moscow, and he was living in Baku, which is the capital of Russian Azerbaijan of those days. And so he wrote to my father, Abdul Baha did, he said, you translate such and such a tablet of Baha'u'llah, such and tablet of Baha'u'llah. He made a selection of tablets that my father had to translate into Russian. He asked him also to translate his own narrative, what was the title?
Traveler's Narrative.
Traveler's Narrative of Abdul Baha. He instructed my father to translate that from the Persian, because my father knew Persian, into Russian. And he translated these things. Many, many things have been translated by my father and were sent to Tolstoy, original texts. He selected one other of his tablets, very important tablets, asked my father to translate it. So all these things went gradually with a covering letter to Tolstoy from my father. So these, I hope, may be retrieved one day from the archival stores of Tolstoy in Russia. And I'm sure that the Russian National Spiritual Assembly is fully aware of these things, and undoubtedly they will take action. So that was the relationship of my father to Tolstoy. We hear about the hands of God. It's not hands of God, it's hands of the cause of God. We hear about the hands of God. Okay, how many hands were appointed? The total number of hands appointed, this was started by Baha'u'llah himself. The institution of the hands was started by Baha'u'llah, but it was hands of the cause of God. Ayadiyya Amrullah. Okay? There were, in total, from the time of Baha'u'llah until the passing of Shoghi Effendi, there were 50 of the outstanding believers of the cause who had been either appointed or referred to in the writings of especially Abdul Baha as occupying the rank of hand of the cause of God, or when they passed away, like Dr. Esselband, like Martha Root, and so on, after the passing of that person, Louis Gregory, such individual, posthumously, Shoghi Effendi would say they occupied the rank of hands of the cause of God. And of course there are those that he appointed himself. So different levels, different situations, different circumstances. In all there were 50. You see, when Shoghi Effendi passed away, 27 of them were still alive. 27. And there is a very interesting point that I must explain here. When we read the Kitab Aqdas, we see that in paragraph 173, 173, Baha'u'llah refers to the learned in the cause. Shoghi Effendi was asked, who are the learned in the cause? And of course there is a reference to rulers in the cause. He explained that when there is such references, the learned, it refers to the hands of the cause of God. You see? So, and the rulers, he said, they are the members of the Universal House of Justice, the National Assemblies, and the local assemblies. They are the rulers. And this is two different lines. Always two. There are so many things in the cause of Baha'u'llah which are in two, in twos, in pairs. Okay, now I want your full attention here. The 27 hands of the cause who were still living in the days of the beloved guardian, after his passing, of course, were referred to as the chief stewards of the embryonic world commonwealth, Baha'i world commonwealth. Chief stewards. This term, chief stewards, is when the captain of a ship is unable to function or is absent, then the lieutenants take over and they carry out the work as a temporary measure. Chief stewards of the Baha'i world embryonic commonwealth. The 23, because we said 50, didn't we? The 23 were only hands of the cause of God, and whatever is written about their functions. But the 27 were hands of the cause of God plus chief stewards. They had an additional function that the other 23 did not have. There were two things. They were hands of the cause, and now the interesting thing that in the Kitab al-Aqdas, as I told you, there is a reference of 173, paragraph 173. That is for hands of the cause of God generally. They say, Baha'u'llah says, there are stars in the heaven of my cause. They are hands of the cause of God. But the 27, of course, have the same functions, the same rank as the other 23, but they have this additional, collectively, they have this additional function. Stewards, chief stewards. So I'm trying to explain to you this thing so that you will understand. We should be very honored and privileged that among us we have Mrs. Muhajir. Mrs. Muhajir, her father was hand of the cause of God, Mr. Furutan, Janab Furutan. That's her father. Her husband was also a hand of the cause of God, Dr. Rahmatullah Muhajir. So she is herself and her husband, both of them Knights of Baha'u'llah. They went to the Mentawai Islands. And they had such great response among the people, the local people. And many of them are still active in the cause, in the Mentawai. So now my point is that to explain to you these points, it is important for us to know how these things have happened. Now that I'm talking about Mrs. Muhajir, I think I must say also that she is an author in her own right, apart from being a Knight of Baha'u'llah and having this link with two hands of the cause of God, Janab Furutan and Dr. Muhajir. I was also very happy to have the daughter of Dr. Muhajir also with us, who led us in the song, about Baha'u'llah. Yeah. So, I think I'll close here on this subject. There are many people who lose their memory because of illness or old age, like me, for example. However, Baha'u'llah says that we will recount our experiences of this world in the next. How is this possible? It's a reasonable question. But the reality is something else. The reality is that the brain registers all the events, all the experiences of our lives, obviously. My brain has registered your shining, radiant faces, this whole conference room. I will always remember, as long as my brain functions. It is registered. Sometimes retrieval is difficult, but it's there. But what is the brain? The brain is part of the body. When I die, they put the brain inside this coffin and they bury it and it becomes dust. Finished. Like the rest of the body. So what happens to this fine brain that God has created for us? The answer is given by Abdul Baha in some answered questions. When they asked him about mind, there is a difference between these two words, brain and mind. The mind, which in Persian we say aql, for this we say maghza. The Arabic also has two different words. French has two different words. English has, most languages have two different words. One is this physical thing, and one is mind. They asked about mind. Abdul Baha says, mind is a ray of the soul, not of the body. It's a faculty of the soul. So the soul does not die. So this is when something happens, for example, our meeting here. My experience of this meeting is being registered in two places, if I may put it that way. In my brain and in my mind. When I go to the next world, I carry my mind with me. My mind is not buried in the coffin. That's where, if I have any recollections, I can share it with others. So if you understand this, there will be no problem at all. Please explain the implications of resignation and submission. Okay. Now, resignation and submission are rather synonymous. There is another word which is different from resignation and from submission. Submission and surrender, resignation are about the same thing. But those of you who speak Persian, there are two words in Persian which express the degrees of resignation, how it can be elevated, how it can be ennobled. And that is taslim wa riza. Riza is a higher level than taslim. Taslim is to be resigned. For example, after the First World War, the Germans surrendered. That was submission. The Japanese surrendered. But what was going on in their hearts? Were they happy? Of course not. Their pride did not allow them to be very happy. But outwardly, they accept. Inwardly, it is still there. There is resentment, there is unhappiness, discontent. Reza is contentment, the opposite of discontent. So resignation and submission and surrender is one thing, then contentment. Radiant acquiescence. We find this in the writings. Radiant acquiescence. Radiant acquiescence is different from submission, surrender. I give up. But inside, it's boiling. There is no resolve. There is no contentment. There is no radiant acquiescence. The two must go together. Then it is elevated, it is ennobled, it is acceptable in the sight of God. In your talks, you mentioned that we should be in a state of unity and prayer. To be in a state of unity, must we always agree? For example, in a family, on a local assembly, in the community. Well, in the assembly and in the community, it's very simple. In the family, it is a little bit more complicated. But in the assembly and in the community, it's very simple. It is majority vote. If unanimous vote is not possible, we go by majority vote. When the majority vote has been clear, everybody agrees. There's no party, there is no I agree, I disagree, we all agree. That's the instruction. We don't say, well, I am in the minority, of course I don't agree. And after the assembly I go out and say, you know, there's going to be an announcement about the decision of the local assembly. Never mind, but I don't agree with it. And I said so in the local assembly. I disagree with it. This is wrong. This is totally un-Baha'i. Can't be. When a decision is taken in an assembly, finished. Whether it's local, whether it is universal, whether it is national. Finished. Everybody accepts. Everybody supports. And we don't say, I disagree, I was in the minority. I'm very sorry that this decision was taken, but believe me, I tried my best, it didn't work. This is all un-Baha'i, totally foreign to the Baha'i spirit. So when we come to administrative affairs, it's very clear. But when it comes to the family, this depends on how the husband and wife want to agree or disagree, but there should be some kind of giving up for the sake of unity. Two individuals, two different backgrounds, of course, there may be some disagreement. But to make that disagreement to change it into friction, into division, that's wrong. One of the two parties should give up. Should give up. Now, how this is going to work, I don't know. Each family has to do it on their own. Some families, I know, decide that on certain matters, the decision of, let's say, the husband will prevail. The other one will express an opinion, but they will prevail on such and such matters. On such and other matters, the woman, whatever she says, will prevail, although it will be preceded by full discussion. Now, whatever the solution is found is your decision. But our duty is amity, reconciliation, love, affection, and complete giving up for the sake of the higher good. The higher good is always harmony. We have to aim for that. And it requires a kind of nobility of character. To be noble. By that I don't mean to be a prince or something like that, or a monarch or member of the nobility of kings and aristocrats. I don't mean that. There is a nobility of character. Baha'u'llah says in the hidden words, I created thee noble. He's talking about the soul. I created thee noble. Why dost thou abase thyself? Keep your nobility. Give up when it is time to give up for the sake of unity. Be detached. Be noble. Think of the welfare of the cause. Whatever is better for the cause, accept it. And be sure that God is above us all, that He will not allow injustice to prevail, and He will interfere in our lives. And if there is any wrong done, He will make it right. Because we have done our share, He will do His share. If we are with Him, He will be with us. As the hidden words say, if we love Him, He loves us. If we don't love Him, His love will never reach us. It's clear in the hidden word. It's a quid pro quo. But then there is another tablet from Baha'u'llah in which he says that, be thou with God and you will see that He is with you. Kun ma'allah, tara Allahu ma'ak. You will see. The additional element is this new statement is that He will show you a sign that He has been around. He'll show you that you can immediately see His fingerprints. You can see His footprints. You know He has come. He has interfered in our lives. And thank God that He does interfere. And we have to be pure in our motives so that He will interfere. We should always be ready to invite Him to come into our lives. Not push Him away. He will come and He will show us that He has been with us, that He has helped us, that He has guided us, that He has blessed us. Could you comment on the most effective approach to teaching, particularly in the age of social media or internet? I find several comments by friends on blogs or other social network sites too aggressive and off-putting to many readers, most of them being seekers. What can you do? Today we are living in this internet age. What can we do? Some people are wise, some people are not wise. How can you control everybody? With the present media that we have, well, mistakes are made. But when you make a pronouncement, be sure that you are doing it, what you are saying is dignified, that it's in harmony with the basic teachings of our faith, that it is acceptable in His sight, that you are talking and you are writing in moderation, in wisdom, with tactfulness. These things you have to do. But you cannot control everybody in the world and say, why are you aggressive in this, by giving this answer? Forget it. It comes, some people read it, some people don't read it. Let it go. That's not your responsibility. In this age, the way internet works, there's nothing that you can do. There's no point in writing to this guy and say, now why have you written so impolitely? Why is it that you don't have any moderation, any wisdom in... You have no right to do that. You are an individual, he is an individual. Institutions should say this. If it is something very serious, you can report it to institutions, for the institutions to act, if you like, if it is very, very serious. But if it is minor issues, let it go. But when you make a pronouncement, make it clear. Observe the standard. Do you have any guidance for us regarding how we know when an answer we receive is vain imaginings and when it is true guidance? I think that the writer has forgotten, or maybe he or she remembers this, that I told the greatest holy leaf that I want to be a prophet. How can I answer this? Whatever each one of you may say is correct, maybe. How can I? But I tell you something, when an idea comes to you as a result of your prayer, if you see that the answer is you don't like somebody, you have a problem with somebody, and the thought that comes to you, well, Ali, all you have to do is to go and kill him. This is certainly nothing. It couldn't be right. It's against the law of God. How could God inspire me to do something which is against the law? So obviously it's my ego. It's my vain imaginings, as the question is. So that's wrong. Certainly wrong. It's very clearly wrong. But when there is in a gray area, you don't know this is correct, we have another recourse. Consultation. Consultation. Consultation can be of two kinds. Consultation with friends, with individuals, with people we trust, whose opinion we value, who are wise, and we know they are wise, and we go and we say, I would like to consult with you about this. This is one possibility. No problem. And maybe the problem can be resolved. You don't know whether it's there, it's here. It will help you. Consultation throws light for the mind to understand which way should I go. That's very important for consultation to be part of your final decision. Baha'u'llah tells us in the Hidden Words, number 19 of the Persian, approach me not with lifeless hearts, defiled with worldly desires and cravings. This instruction makes it very difficult to pray. Sometimes when we are angry or sad or distracted, what can we do? I sympathize with you, 100%. I think when he speaks about lifeless hearts defiled with worldly desires and cravings, this is Shoghi Effendi's translation. Shoghi Effendi has translated the word self or ego or selfishness in different ways. As I recall, I haven't double checked, but as I recall, this is a reference to the self. And he uses such terms as worldly desires and cravings. Sometimes he uses the word corrupt desires. Sometimes he uses the word self and passion. Sometimes you find the word insistent self. You know, different words are used in order to fit the sentence well. Shoghi Effendi was an artist. You know, his translations are truly masterpieces. Masterpieces, not only from the point of view of conveying truth, but purely from a linguistic point of view. Shoghi Effendi was an artist. I was talking to Mashiat Rahmani this morning. We were recalling the word prayer hearing, prayer answering God. Now, I don't know how many of you have good memories. My memory is not so good. I haven't come across any piece of English literature which uses this term, prayer hearing, prayer answering. This is, to me, this is a miracle of Shoghi Effendi. He has infused into the English language certain terms that have never been used, in my opinion. In the future, they will be studying the translations of Shoghi Effendi, even the writings of Shoghi Effendi, purely from their linguistic point of view, the value that these words have. Sometimes never mentioned before. This prayer hearing, prayer answering God is Huwa Sami'ul Mujib. Shoghi Effendi comes up with this remarkable translation. So for the ego or the self, he uses different terms, you know. It's not always the same to fit in with his sentence. So what he's talking about is control your ego before you come to me. That's in plain, simple English. Don't come with the burden of your soul being under the pressure, under the influence of your ego. Take it easy. Relax. Forgive. Forget. Come with an open mind, open soul to me. Approach me then.